Hello, fight fans. Welcome to another edition of Monday Night Fight Talk. As always, I am your host, Dylan Brewski, and usually I like my intros to be very upbeat, very uplifting, smiling and everything. You know, kind of the typical intro when it comes to this type of stuff. But as some people may know, I feel like I have mentioned this in the past before, but I do record this show usually on Sunday and then release it Monday night. And the reason for the somber mood kind of starting this off is just a few hours before I started recording this show, I found out Anthony Rumble Johnson did pass away. Very tragic. He was only 38 years old. Obviously, way too soon for anyone to pass. It's a tragic day in the MMA community today. It sounds like he was battling an illness. He had to pull out of a Bellator fight. I believe that was coming up that he was going to be a part of because of this illness. And it sounds like it just got the better of him, unfortunately. I put this on Twitter and my Instagram story yesterday. Anthony Johnson was always one of my favorite fighters to watch of all time. In the history of MMA, Anthony Johnson has always been one of the top guys I just loved watching. I've kind of grown more into becoming a full-on MMA fan where I watch different organizations where I used to be, I'll admit it, I was much more of a casual fan in the past. And I mean, that's okay. I mean, not everybody's going to be super in-depth with their MMA knowledge or just sports in general. People have their likes and their dislikes. But with this one, when I was a casual MMA fan, it didn't matter. If Anthony Johnson was on a card, I was tuning into it. He was always one of the most exciting fighters at the time when I really started to get more into MMA. When I started to understand it more, when it wasn't just two guys throwing big blows at each other. It was an art to me, and like I enjoyed watching the different styles, and I understood the different styles. And Anthony Johnson was always just a powerhouse. I mean, just unbelievable knockout power. I believe he's like tied for the fourth most UFC knockouts in history with 11. Just an all-around humble guy. You never heard anything about him being a bad person. He always got along with his opponents, and it just sucks to see a guy like that who is so influential for probably not only me, probably for a lot of people in the MMA community, because he was just so exciting to watch fight. It was unbelievable. You always knew there was going to be fireworks. Win or lose, he was bringing the fireworks to that fight. He was always a gamer when it came to big fights. He was a part of 2 championship fights where he came up short both times against Daniel Cormier, an all-time great, and plenty of other big fights in the UFC. I mean, he's beat Glover Teixeira. He's beat Alexander Gustafsson. He's beat Little Nog. There's countless other guys that he's faced, he's gone up against, and he's had a great showing against those fighters. It's such tragic news, especially after an amazing night like the night before, UFC 281. I mean, just a tremendous pay-per-view, and then to find out the next day that Anthony Rumble Johnson passed away it was tough, for sure. I just want to say quick RIP to Mr. Anthony Johnson, the whole Johnson family. You're in my thoughts while you go through this tragedy. And any MMA fan out there who feels the same way, maybe even more for Anthony Johnson, I feel for you. It's a tough day for the whole MMA community, but at least we know he's not in pain anymore. He's not dealing with this illness. He's not feeling run down anymore. And he's looking over every one of those guys in the UFC and Bellator and One Championship, Ryzen, any of those guys. He's looking down on all of us now. So just wanted to give a quick RIP to Mr. Anthony Johnson. But now I want to try to lighten it up a little bit. Obviously, it's kind of hard after news like that, but like I kind of alluded to, UFC 281, ladies and gentlemen, was absolutely unreal. It was everything that we could have hoped that this pay-per-view was. It turned out, and it was just a fantastic pay-per-view. I'm going over quite a few fights. I believe 6 fights I will be going over. Starting off with one of the prelim fights, Aaron Blanchfield, Molly McCann, 2 ranked flyweights. Aaron Blanchfield put on a absolute dominant performance. One of the best young prospects, not only in this division, not only in the women's division overall. I am talking MMA, UFC. Aaron Blanchfield is the real deal, and she proved it 2 nights ago at UFC 281, especially through weird adversity. You have Molly McCann, who's from England, overseas. This is in the Garden, in Madison Square Garden. Aaron Blanchfield's from New Jersey. It's basically a hometown fight for her. And she's not getting as loud as cheers as Molly McCann is. They're shouting Meatball Molly during the fight. But Aaron Blanchfield had a game plan, and she executed it to absolute perfection in this fight. I mean, she executed a takedown early to neutralize the power of Molly McCann. We all know what Molly McCann can do on the feet. She is very dangerous on the feet. Aaron Blanchfield took that away as quick as she could, got her to the ground, got in dominant positions just right away with the crucifix position. Landed not crazy hard blows, but still, I mean, those getting elbowed and punched in the crucifix position where you can't defend yourself whatsoever is still not a fun position to be in. And then able to execute that Kimura, get the submission win. I was going back and watching it and listening to Joe Rogan. I agree with him. I hate watching the Kimura armbar because it can so easily just snap that arm, and so many people wait too long to tap out and then their arm snapped. But luckily, Molly McCann was smart about it. She did tap out when it got pretty deep in, and she knew she wasn't going to get out of it. But just an overall impressive win over a veteran, over the one who had the crowd behind them. I mean, Aaron Blanchfield's 23 years old, and she's doing that to Molly McCann, fellow ranked flyweights. This girl is for real, and she is coming to the top of that flyweight division, and I cannot wait to see it. I'm very excited to see where Aaron Blanchfield goes next. I'm saying a top 10 fighter needs to step up and take a chance against Aaron Blanchfield, because I think she's up and she's ready for a top 10 contender in that flyweight division. Next up, another prelim fight. Dominic Reyes making his return against Ryan Superman Spann. And man, I gotta admit, I underestimated Ryan Spann in this fight, and I will say I am never going to make that mistake again. Holy crap. He fought an almost perfect fight. In retrospect, he had great defense. He looked absolutely fantastic against a former title contender. Like I said last week, yes, Dominic Reyes is coming off of a 3-fight losing streak, but that's against 3 either current or former champions. We are talking John Jones, Jan Blachowicz, Yuri Prohaska. Most people are losing all 3 of those fights. I'm not going to fault anyone for losing to those 3 in a row. But Ryan Spann came in, He tried to sink in a guillotine choke early, but he didn't use too much of his power or energy to try to sink it in because it wasn't really that close. So he was smart, let go of that. And then he just to knock someone out cold with a jab is so insanely impressive, especially a guy like Dominic Reyes. Dominic Reyes has been hit quite a few times, as we all know. But I mean, just not even to like rocking someone. Like I can see that getting rocked by a jab, but to knock someone out cold on the ground. I mean, Dominic Reyes may have been a little conscious, and then that one hammer fist really put his lights out. But still, Ryan Spann had a huge coming out party with this fight. I know he lost to Anthony Smith, I believe it was 2 or 3 years ago. And then he was kind of fighting, I don't want to say lower level fighters because that kind of discounts everybody else's ability, but he did kind of take a step back and fight people more on his level. And then this was a good coming out party for him to beat one of those top 10 guys, to beat a former title contender in Dominic Reyes. Huge win for Ryan Spann in this one. Congratulations to him. I'm excited to see where he goes next because I could definitely see him jumping into that top 10, and it'll be interesting to see where they kind of go from there. I know like Nikita Krylov just won a few months ago. You got Volkan Ozdemir, who just lost a few months ago. So it'll be interesting if one of them steps up and tries to fight Ryan Spann here soon. But excited to see where he goes from here. And hopefully Dom Reyes can bounce back soon from these 4 straight losses that he has now endured. And I thought about talking about the Claudio Puelles and Dan Hooker fight. I mean, I do want to give a quick shout out to Dan Hooker. Great comeback win. I know he's had a tough run at it as of late. I actually picked Claudio Puelles in this fight, but Claudio Puelles had not the right game plan, to say the least, in this fight. He just kept on trying to grab the legs of Dan Hooker, and Dan Hooker wasn't falling for it at any point. Dan Hooker used the body kicks to absolute perfection. That was ultimately what ended the fight. So quick shout out to Dan Hooker for getting back on the winning side of things. Hopefully they can have him compete in Perth with Alexander Volkanovski, his teammate. I think that would be pretty fun to see him compete back at home in Australia. But the next fight I really want to talk about, Frankie Edgar versus Chris Gutierrez. It really sucks to see Frankie Edgar go out like that. An all-time great getting put up against a great up-and-coming striker who just has amazing power, amazing striking, especially because those are like the last 2-3 fights that Frankie Edgar has been in. I mean, we're talking about Corey Sandhagen, flying knee knockout, Chito Vera, the front kick to the face knockout, and now the knee up the middle to knock him out in this fight, in his retirement fight. But I don't want to take anything away from Chris Gutierrez. He came in, he did what he had to do to get the biggest win of his career over a legend in Frankie Edgar. This probably puts him in the bantamweight rankings. As we know, it's not very easy to get into the bantamweight rankings. And doing it in dramatic fashion with a huge knee KO over the legend Frankie Edgar. But to get back to Frankie Edgar, I just want to do a quick moment. Any new MMA fan, I hope you get the chance to go back and watch Frankie Edgar. This doesn't... I mean, we're talking about Frankie. Prime Frankie Edgar was the former lightweight champion. He was a former title contender in the featherweight division. He fought for the featherweight championship 2 times, once against Max Holloway, once against Alexander Volkanovski. Came up short both times. So has everybody else against Max Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski in the featherweight division. So just all-around beast with great wrestling, fantastic striker. Congratulations to Frankie Edgar on a tremendous career, without a doubt a future Hall of Famer. I can't wait to see what the future holds for you. I can't wait to see your Hall of Fame night. It's going to be very fun to watch. A true legend of MMA finally was the one to finally dethrone BJ Penn from his years of dominance in the lightweight division. So congratulations on the tremendous career, Frankie Edgar. Can't wait to see where you go from here. And now for the final three. First off, Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler. This fight, that's really all you can say. Everything I could have hoped for, probably more than what I could have hoped for. These two guys, we knew were going to put on a show. But man, the pride, the skill, and just the overall entertainment of this fight was just unreal. It was out of this world. The first round, unreal with action. Both guys got rocked. Both guys were very close to getting finished. Chandler probably got saved by the bell in that first round. I honestly full on think Dan Miragliotta heard the 10-second kind of clap thing, and that was the sole reason he didn't stop that fight in the first round. Just unbelievable. Dustin Poirier was this close to a finish. And then you get to the second round, a lot more grappling in the second round. Michael Chandler had a great comeback round in that second round. I definitely think he clearly won that second round. Then the third round, Chandler goes for another takedown, but Poirier ends up getting his back, locks in the body triangle, and then works his way to that rear naked choke, getting a huge, huge win for Dustin Poirier. Congrats to both of these guys for putting on that show. Both of these guys are warriors in the truest definition. If any two guys you want to talk about being warriors in MMA, these are probably two of the top guys that you would think of when it comes to that term. Dustin Poirier and Michael Chandler. Just an unbelievable bout. Congratulations to both of these guys, especially Dustin Poirier coming out with the big win. His first submission win in almost a decade. His last submission win, like full-on submission win. I know he had like the body triangle rib injury win over Anthony Pettis, but I don't know if that was like injury TKO type thing. This was his first full-on submission win in the lightweight division in the UFC. He did it back in 2012, December of 2012, in the featherweight division. That's how long we're talking since Dustin Poirier got a true submission win. So congratulations to him. And now for the first of our two title fights, Carla Esparza, the strawweight champion, or should I say former strawweight champion, taking on the newly crowned strawweight champion in Yang Weili. Just actually a very good fight. Weili did pretty much run away with it, but she just had a huge advantage on the feet. Carla Esparza stood absolutely zero chance when that fight was standing. Now, Carla Esparza may not be the most exciting fighter. I'll be on record saying I'm not the biggest fan of Carla Esparza. Do I think she's an amazing fighter? Absolutely. But she's just not the most exciting one. But she is just unbelievable. She's an unbelievable grappler, and no one can deny that. And obviously, Weili worked on her grappling, and that's basically it for this fight. Because that was the best I've seen anyone fight on the ground with Carla Esparza. It was just unbelievable. Weili came in and held her own on the ground with probably the best strawweight wrestler that there is. She was able to get reversals in both rounds. Second round obviously being a much bigger reversal because it got her to Carla Esparza's back, where she had this weird, she went for a crucifix at first, but from behind, and then she changed it to where she had one of her arms locked up, and then she got the choke in, was able to regain the strawweight title, joining Rose Namajunas, Carla Esparza, and Amanda Nunes as the only women in UFC history to have two separate title reigns in the same division. So congratulations to Yang Weili. Congratulations to the country of China. You now again have a champion. Just an overall great performance by Yang Weili. She went in, did what she had to do, came out on top with the victory. And now the main event of the evening. Wow. Israel Adesanya, the longtime champion, probably the second greatest middleweight of all time. And by probably, I mean he is the second greatest middleweight of all time, behind, obviously, Anderson the Spider Silva. What an entertaining fight this was. What a story it was leading up to it. And it lived up to everything that at least I wanted it to be personally. That was probably the highest quality of striking in a matchup between two fighters that the UFC can produce right there, is those two going at it. I mean, obviously both former professional kickboxers, both very, very good kickboxers. Adesanya looked absolutely fantastic in this fight. Incredibly confident, and rightfully so. He was on his way. He was, 2-3 minutes away from retaining his title. And all he had to do was get to the end horn or strike with Pereira, and then Pereira rocked him. And unfortunately, when you have a guy that is so much bigger, just so supremely in physical, just unbelievable physical shape, like Alex Pereira, that's all it takes is that one shot. And he was able to get the fifth round TKO victory, an upset, come from behind victory. A little bit of controversy on the stoppage. I personally think it was a good stoppage. I don't think it was great by any means. I don't think it was the perfect stoppage. But at the same time, when you're looking at it in real time, what I saw was Israel Adesanya was not fully defending himself against the cage. He was not. He was sitting there, and his hands were kind of up, but there was one point where his head was fully down and his hands were down here while Alex Pereira was throwing punches at him. Could it have gone a little bit longer? Maybe. But honestly, Mark Goddard is, I think, personally the best MMA ref in the business right now. And in real time, it did not look like Israel Adesanya was properly defending himself. I think, again, it was a good stoppage. I don't think it was the perfect stoppage. If it would have gone on a little longer, I wouldn't have been like, are you serious? What are we doing? But I don't think it was an early stoppage by any means. But congratulations to Pereira on winning the title in that fashion. And let's get prepared for the rematch. I mean, I was saying, I went to a friend's house and was watching the fights with a bunch of people, and I was like, they might as well just announce a rematch to be determined at a later date at the post-fight interview with both of them. I mean, it's not like they're not going to give Israel Adesanya a immediate rematch. I mean, he was the number 2 pound for pound fighter in the world, and you're not going to offer him an immediate rematch. He's getting an immediate rematch. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out with the immediate rematch, because I'll be honest, I'm still going to pull for Adesanya. I think Adesanya is the better MMA fighter. But that's a topic to get to on another day. But that's really all I have for reactions to UFC 281. Personally, I think that's the pay-per-view card of the year, without a doubt. It was unreal. Everything that we wished it could have been. So congratulations to all the winners. Congratulations to everybody on that card. Absolutely unbelievable card to watch. And before I get into some fight predictions, there's one more thing I want to talk about. And that's because there was a couple humongous announcements on Saturday. And that And both of them happen to be on the same exact day. And I am so excited. For UFC 284 in Perth, Australia, we got 2 title fights. One of them being interim, one being champ versus champ. Alexander Volkanovski puts his pound-for-pound status on the line, moving up to lightweight to fight the newly crowned lightweight champion Islam Makhachev. And then also, you have the interim featherweight title while Alexander Volkanovski is fighting for the lightweight title between Yair Rodriguez and Josh Emmett. I mean, that's a great main and co-main right there. We're talking, like I said, champ versus champ between arguably the 2 best fighters in the UFC. Pound for pound champ moving up to face the new dominant champion. Come on. Not only that, interim title, Yair Rodriguez and Josh Emmett have both been on rolls to go along with it. I am so pumped. I know a lot of people, including myself, were wanting to see Arnold Allen in that interim title shot. But I actually heard in an interview that Arnold Allen actually hurt his hand in the fight against Calvin Kattar, and is probably going to be out for a few months. I'm assuming that's why they chose Yair and Josh Emmett for this fight. So I kind of understand it. And not only those 2 fights, that's not even mentioning probably the premier fight before those 2 title fights, the former champ Robert Whittaker taking on Paulo Costa. I mean, come on. This pay-per-view is shaping up to be absolutely fantastic. And it's next year. We're talking, 3 months from now? 3-4 months from now? We have to wait 3-4 months for this to happen? I cannot wait. I think it's going to be an absolutely crazy pay-per-view, and I am so excited for it. I had to get my excitement out for this pay-per-view, so I put it on this show. But let's get into some predictions. Last but not least, I'll be predicting 3 fights for the UFC Fight Night. Derek Lewis versus Sergey Spivac will be headlining that one. Now, I'm not going to lie, this one was slim pickings when it came to some of these fights. Certainly on paper, this is not the greatest fight night in the world. We're talking 7 versus 12 in the main event. That's pretty tough, but I think it has some exciting fights on there between some unranked fighters. In fact, 2 of the fights I'm going over, the only one that's not the main event that I'm going over is 2 unranked fights. First off, what looks like at this moment to be the first fight on the main card is Jack Della Maddalena taking on Danny Roberts, one of the bigger up-and-coming prospects in this welterweight division. Jack Della Maddalena, I gotta slow down when I'm saying his name, who lost his first 2 pro MMA bouts and then never looked back and then rattled off 12 straight wins, and now he's 12-2, including a Contender Series bout back in late 2021, and then his first 2 UFC bouts, both first-round finishes, even that. Danny Roberts, though, is a solid fighter in his own rights, brings the experience to this bout. I believe he's 24 professional MMA bouts, so he does bring the experience. Also, he will be motivated to come back from his loss earlier this year to Francisco Trinaldo. I personally don't think that's going to happen, though. I have high hopes. I think Della Maddalena is one of the best prospects. I feel like I say that almost every week, but man, there is a lot of good prospects in the UFC right now, and Della Maddalena is certainly one of them. I think he's a serious problem for this division, and I think he gets the win via second round TKO, and I am here fully for that fight. I can't wait for it. The next fight I want to talk about, though, is Andre Fialho and Muslim Salikov. this is a fight to tune into if you want some fireworks. This is going to be a very fun fight. Both guys, highly talented strikers. Both have quite a few KO victories in their career. And both guys are looking to bounce back from losses earlier this year. Andre Fialho has been incredibly active as of late. I believe this is his 5th fight in this calendar year. He's 2-2. He's motivated to come back and end 2022 on a winning note. And then Muslim Salikov looks to bounce back from his loss to Li Jingliang earlier this year. This is a very, very tough fight to call, truthfully, as these guys are very evenly matched, at least in my eyes. But I'm going with Muslim Salikov to win this fight by 3rd round TKO. And now that leads us to our main event of the evening in the heavyweight division. Former championship fight staple, former title contender Derek Lewis taking on Sergey Spivac. Most likely going to see some fireworks in this fight as well. I mean, you got Derek Lewis, the greatest knockout artist in UFC history, who has struggled as of recent. He's had a tough run as of late, losing an interim title shot to Cyril Gane. He did beat Chris Daukaus, and then he got KO'd 2 times this year by Tai Tuivasa, Sergey Pavlovich, which, I mean, those 3 losses are against 3 top 5 heavyweights right now. So you kind of got to take that one with a grain of salt. Where Sergey Spivac is certainly the more well-rounded fighter. He has been on quite a bit of a roll as of late. He's won 6 of his last 8, with his 2 losses being Marcin Tybura and Tom Aspinall. But again, I do believe Spivac is obviously the more well-rounded fighter. I see him trying to take this fight to the ground as soon as possible, neutralize the power that we all know that Derek Lewis possesses. So it will be very interesting. I think if Sergey Spivac can get this fight to the ground, he should roll to a victory. But on the feet, you never know with Derek Lewis. We've seen that guy come back from crazy fights. Alexander Volkov is the prime example of that, where Derek Lewis looked completely outmatched. He was down and out in the 3rd round, and he comes back and knocks him out and wins the fight. So I think it's a fun and interesting fight that I could see both guys winning. But I am going to go with Sergey Spivac by 4th round TKO in this fight. But that's all I have for you this week. Next week, we got a pretty busy week in MMA leading up to next week's show. We got Bellator. We got one on Friday, one championship on Friday, both of those on Friday. And then obviously the Fight Night on Saturday. And that's not even mentioning the one event that is on their local time on Saturday morning at like 2:30 our time, or my time, I should say. And also Invicta on Wednesday, I believe it is. So I'll be going over some of those events, some of the bigger fights on those events. But the week after is the weekend of U.S. Thanksgiving. There is no UFC event, so there will be no predictions next week, but quite a bit of reactions. So I think we'll have a bit of a normal timed show. This one kind of ran long because of UFC 281 and, of course, the tragic passing of Anthony Johnson. But until then, I will see you all next week. Same time, same place on YouTube for Monday Night Fight Talk. And one last time, RIP to Anthony Johnson.